I think we're willing to hurt for other people far more than we are for ourselves. And you try and make it as enjoyable and as comfortable and as good an experience for the other person as possible. They made me take adoption leave. I was entitled to the same amount of leave, but it's just hard hearing that when you've already gone through so many struggles. A lot of people come to surrogacy having had, trauma and hard times before that, whether that is getting your MRKH diagnosis, whether that's going through cancer or miscarriages. But I want to share that it can be a really positive experience. I am Charlie Watson. I am a runner, an NHS dietitian, a mum, and currently studying to become a sports dietitian or, registered sports dietitian. So a bit busy.
I was just going to say just a few things. How are you managing to balance it all?
Not well. We're in a sleep regression for my 2-year-old, and my house is a mess right now. So that's how we're not prioritizing the tidying. We are just getting on with life.
Yeah, sometimes I think you just have to kind of accept the chaos, don't you? Like when you're in a period where you are super busy, and I guess we'll probably get into this when we talk about running a little bit more as well, particularly in the training block and things like that. You just have to accept the chaos, accept that everything isn't going to be balanced all the time.
Yes, if someone could explain that to my very neurotic husband, who is so tidy, so to the point where I will open the curtains and he will reopen them because I won't have done that properly. So the only reason I'm getting away with the house being so messy right now is because he's on a trip. He's a long haul pilot. So tomorrow I'll be frantically tidying up before he gets home.
Let's go all the way back then to the start of your running journey. I think it's 16 marathons you've done to this point, if my research was correct. But how did that begin, that whole journey? Because you don't just get to a point where you've run 16 marathons. Take me all the way back to the start.
So I signed up for my first marathon before running almost any other distance, and did it, kind of a bit backwards, but did it, signed up in memory of a friend wanting to do something that was positive in his memory, raise money for Mind, the mental health charity, to kind of keep talking about Vic and about what happened to him. He sadly took his own life. And I think this was 12, 13 years ago that I ran the marathon. And I feel like now men's mental health is talked about a little bit more, but back then it was not talked about at all. We were starting to talk about mental health, but it was more about women sharing with other women. So being able to talk to my friends about Vic and his mental health and having other male friends talk to me about it, it was like a really positive thing to do, and sign up for the marathon, do something out of my comfort zone and raise money and awareness.
It's so many people's story, right? Isn't it, like that signing up initially under a charity place for whatever cause, but I feel like then you go one of two ways. You take one of two roads, if you will. You do one and then you go down the road of not doing anything else, or you do one and you go down the road that you've gone down of doing loads more. So why did it stick, do you think?
I mean, I just think London Marathon is so special. For anyone that does the London Marathon as their first marathon, I would love to see how many people that do London as their charity race actually do others, because it's such a magical day where the emotions, the spectators, the support from everybody in the whole city is just incredible. And that feeling is, although you're doing it for somebody else for another reason, the kind of the praise, the feeling special, really, being on the course and having people cheering your name. And I did it with a friend, and although there were parts where I definitely didn't love it, I crossed the finish line and thought, I bet I could do that again and run faster. And so that it was kind of the enjoyment of the day, the crowds, the incredible atmosphere, but also the competitive side of myself that was like, oh, like I wanted sub 5, I've got my sub 5, what can I do next?
And obviously finishing that in memory of Vic, that must have felt quite special as well, to kind of to be able to do that, and as you say, have those conversations that maybe you wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, I mean, I think he got me through my training. It was wanting to raise as much money as possible for Mind, that made me start my blog and document my journey to tell my friends and family how awful marathon training was, and try and get them to feel bad for me and dig deep into their pockets. And, it was mostly photos of early morning wet runs and porridge taken on a digital camera that I would run with. And yeah, I think having that reason helped me through training and helped me through some dark moments on the course. But ultimately, it became actually a bit of a savior for myself, as in I wasn't living a particularly healthy lifestyle. I'm not sure I was that kind of happy with my body, with my life, with what, like, the choices that I was making. And so it gave me an outlet for my own mental kind of well-being. And yeah, I think it gave me so much more than I took so much more from the experience than I gave in terms of, the giving back to the mental health charity, the memory of Vic. And I think that is so special that, 13 years later, I still think about him all the time and think how amazing it is that essentially he gave me this gift of running.
Where do you think you'd be now then without it? Because for people that aren't watching this and are just listening, as soon as you started speaking about running then and kind of what it's done for you over your life, like I could see you beaming, like the smile was actually visible, like, and that made me think, where do you think you would be without this?
I honestly don't know. It's become such a pivotal point, thing in my life. I've changed careers. I was working in magazines, working in the cookery department at Good Housekeeping magazine. And I then went back to university and became a dietitian. And a lot of my friends are runners. And so much of my kind of week is around running. I genuinely don't know. I was going out a lot. I was drinking a lot. I was eating too much because I was working in a magazine where I'd make cakes and roast dinners all day, every day. And so, yeah, I don't think I would be as sort of physically well in terms of my overall health. But I don't know what my mental health would be like.
It's yeah, and it's always a tricky question to answer because you're like, well, I'm not there because I'm here, kind of thing. But it's sometimes nice to like reflect back on those times pre-running, I guess. And like you say, finding running didn't just change your the physical aspect of your life and your kind of health focus, but it also changed your career. How did that then kind of manifest itself? Why did you decide to switch up from doing what you were doing working at the magazine to becoming a dietitian?
So it was back in the time where clean eating was the thing, and I was training for marathons and so hungry all the time, and trying to eat this like clean food that I was seeing on Instagram, whatever that meant at the time. And it was adding courgettes to your porridge and swapping out anything for coconut oil and I was seeing that all over social media. And then in the magazine, we were catering to the kind of 50 plus demographic and doing the full butter cakes and cream filled pastas. And there was no in between. And I was like, neither one of these, I don't think, is perfect. There must be something in the middle that will fuel my body. That means I'm not getting to the end of a long run and reaching for an entire pack of, digestive biscuits.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of that I want to learn more about how to fuel my body. And I started kind of experimenting and reading more and trying to find more evidence-based information. And then it was going down this route of, well, it was a time where we were very lucky that the NHS covered the costs of a dietetic degree. So I had the opportunity to go back and do that without having a huge huge outlay of kind of spending to do it. And just thought, I want to learn more. I want to be able to actually, what I thought I was going to do is bring that back into kind of the magazine world. And somewhere along the course, I got derailed and fell in love with clinical dietetics, and now do a bit of both. But it was kind of stemmed from this, I wouldn't say anger, but this surely clean eating isn't the way to fuel us long term and for marathon training. And I'm feeling exhausted all the time, hungry all the time. What's going on? Something isn't right with either of these kind of diet and lifestyles. So, yeah, it was more of a personal curiosity that started off the journey.
Through that personal curiosity, was there ever like a eureka moment, or was it kind of like a slow burner?
No, I think the main thing has always just been for me is eat real food has been my sort of I did it before and I continue to do it and nothing's off limits. And I think actually an interesting observation was we used to share our lectures with nutritionists, and they're slightly different. It's a slightly nuanced, like dietitians work in more of a clinical setting and nutritionists work in more private settings, but I won't go into the details. But the snacks that the dietitians brought versus the nutritionists in our lectures were so different. It was like a little pot of nuts and seeds for the nutritionist. I'm generalizing. And then the dietitians would be like, oh, I'm having a cookie with my cup of tea at lunchtime or whatever it was. And I really saw that actually there is space for everything in your diet, and nothing, in my opinion, should be off limits. But it's about making choices that are going to fuel you, that are going to allow you to do the activities that you want to do, but also like not losing that social aspect and that enjoyment, the side of food, so that you can go and have a piece of cake at your friend's birthday party or make cookies with your kids and not be like, oh, mummy can't eat these. And that is my big push to try and help other people find that sort of, I hate the term food freedom, but that freedom to make educated choices and enjoy food and feel like they are nourished and well, and that the food they're eating is nice. Because let's be honest, some of the things that were on social media, like let's swap out oh, I'd love to swap out the oats in my porridge and for courgette. Like that sounds miserable.
It does sound miserable. It sounds really miserable. Really miserable. I think as well, like, it's like running, isn't it? And people talk about sort of the exercising for enjoyment or exercising because you think you should be exercising. I kind of think you can relate that to food as well, and diet. It's like, are you eating for balance and enjoyment, or are you and yes, there often sometimes does need to be an element of performance, or are you eating because you think that's the right thing to eat?
Especially with long distance runners and those looking for performance in running, there are times that we do have to eat for performance, like having that extra gel when you probably don't want it, or making sure you finish your run and you've got some protein and carbs to eat straight afterwards, even if you feel a little bit nauseous. And so there are times, I think, where actually the benefit of the fueling on something that we know is going to be beneficial outweighs the am I kind of intuitively eating. But yeah, I think for 90% of our diet, we want it to be something that is nourishing, that's enjoyable, that is convenient, that is seasonal and real food.
Yeah. I think there's definitely been that shift now as well towards real food, isn't there? You've kind of seen that on social, and one thing that you do brilliantly on social, I think, is kind of sharing the de-influencing element of things. I watched a reel actually earlier on today before we chatted, and it was about de-influencing. It was about not having to run the race that you maybe have booked, or not having to do the thing that you've said you were going to do, maybe because something's come up in life, or maybe because an injury's come up. It must be difficult, and has it been difficult, I guess, for you over the years, where running is now such a huge part of your life. It's part of your personality, right, in a lot of ways. When those injuries do come up, or where those family situations do come up, or when, life is super busy, has it been difficult to take yourself out of that and kind of de-influence yourself, or has that come quite naturally to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the FOMO is real, isn't it? Especially with social media and marathons and feeling like everybody's doing them and you're like, why are you not? And should you just be signing up for this, that, and the other? I made the decision the year that after my son was born not to do any marathons that year because I didn't want to have the time away from him on really long training runs. So he was born in October 2022, and I didn't run a marathon until April 2024 was my first marathon after he was born. And I don't regret that at all. That was an easy decision to make. But now someone was like, oh, are you going to run the New York Marathon? And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll sign up via Sports Tours and just go and run that. So yes, it is hard, especially when you feel like everyone is doing all the things. But I think it's about lining up your priorities. So now I'm choosing absolute maximum 2 marathons a year. And even that feels like quite a lot to balance with family and life and work. And just trying to think, right, is this race my priority? If I miss this race, how sad would I be versus me missing the weekend with my family, or versus me being so stressed trying to fit in training for this? And I didn't get the balance right this summer. I trained for Berlin and I hated it. I really hated the training because there was too much else going on in my life. It didn't feel like the most important thing, and I was kind of just doing it because I'd signed up for the race. And so that was a good learning experience for me, thinking I should have deferred. I should have just let it go. I shouldn't have done it. And so I think, you go through these experiences and you learn from each one of them, and with age comes wisdom, hopefully. But as I get older, I can't run back-to-back marathons anymore. I can't get away without doing the strength work. I can't run the long miles and then have a full day of activities. So I think I'm learning that actually the fear of missing out of my own family and my own life stuff is much greater than the fear of missing out of what other people are doing on social media.
Yeah, and it's that acceptance of that as well, isn't it? Like I can relate so much to what you said about Berlin, like being in a training block and realizing, why am I doing this? I actually absolutely hate this. And then that almost makes you feel, I don't want to say guilty, but it makes you feel bad, like, because why are you doing that? And then you feel bad because if you do drop out of it, people are going to be like, why have you dropped out?
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then you're having to explain, well, it's because I don't really feel like I want to do it. And then you feel a bit like a failure. And it's this sort of tumbleweed down a hill type situation, then, isn't it? But I think, like you said, it's just important to kind of be honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think there's so much in running of like, you didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. And I got up early and I got the miles in, and no excuses. And actually, this is our hobby. I've got to do a speed work today, and I wish I had an easy run, but I swapped it yesterday and did the easy run yesterday. So I'm like, okay, I really have to do that. But that's not I really don't want to do this. This is like I wish it was an easy run, but I'm going to just go and get it done. Versus 12, 16, 20 weeks of every weekend going out and doing your long run, getting out in the rain and the whatever, and not enjoying any of it is, I think, a totally different kind of thing to sit down and say, actually, why am I doing it? What are the reasons? Is it because I want to run, the 6 majors and I've got into finally, and maybe I do, maybe the wanting of running your majors outweighs the the kind of the non-enjoyment side of training. Or maybe it's because you are doing it for charity, and then you can dig into that side of, right, this is not about me. What can I do to make this not about me and raise money and blah, blah, blah. But if it's just you've signed up and it's supposed to be a fun race, like, why are you doing it? I think sometimes we've got to sit with ourselves. Is it about getting kudos on social media or Strava? Is it about one-upping your friends? Or, there's I've been out for my 5 a.m. run. I've run this many marathons kind of thing. And actually maybe says more like about you than about the other people. And so maybe you need to sit with that for a while.
And it's brutal as well when you're in a situation where you kind of have realized that maybe you don't want to be doing this race, or you don't want to be in this training block or training cycle. You're beating yourself up because you don't want to be doing it. Then you're beating yourself up because you're moving things. Then you're beating yourself up because you feel guilty. And you're like, hang on, I'm supposed to actually enjoy
Yeah,
this.
I understand why they can't, but I wish more races were a bit more flexible with their deferral policies for illnesses, injuries. And I know they're working really hard at She Races to do the pregnancy deferrals and that kind of thing. But I wish there was a bit more flexibility into like, actually, this is just not the right time for me. And this is negatively impacting my mental health by trying to do this right now. So I know that they're so oversubscribed, most of these big races, and they can't do that. But I wish there was a bit more flexibility.
Life happens, and I think that's an important thing. When you go away with sports tours and things like that, because I know that's been something you've done in the past, talk to me about, you've experienced many, many marathons, you've done many, many races, you've been to many, many majors, but for some of these people on these tours, it's their first time. It's their first time doing it. It's their first time maybe on an abroad race, or their first time running a major. How do you get, like, what's the intrinsic feel for getting to share that experience with them? Does that feel special for you?
I mean, I think running is such a solo sport that getting to share it with anybody, and you get runners in the room. The fact that there are so many running podcasts, we love talking about running. And so getting to kind of impart tips or just share the excitement of somebody's first time running an international race, a major, that specific race, it makes it more exciting for me to then be like, oh, and look out for this. And I think just kind of not taking it for granted. Like, I'm so lucky that I've been able to do so many international races and done some of the majors more than once. And remembering what that felt like to be my first time out there and to travel abroad to run a race for the first time, or run New York or run Chicago. And yet not taking it for granted and making sure that I keep enjoying the little moments rather than just being like, oh, another race. So yeah, I think it makes it so much more special sharing it with friends, and I would say strangers, but actually, runners talk about things that are so unacceptable to talk about in real life, kind of just when you first meet someone. But you can be on the first run with someone and talk about your bowel habits, and that seems to be totally fine.
Yeah, I think that often comes up within the first 5 minutes, doesn't it? It's like, did you go this morning? You're like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yesterday morning, I had a session, and I was meeting a friend to do it, and the session ended up happening 20 minutes later than it was supposed to start, because he hadn't been to the toilet yet. So it was like, and that is just like, that's just the standard conversation, isn't it? Before something like that, it's just like, I'm going to be a bit late. Just don't be angry.
I'm sure it'll be thrilled to be you're sharing this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, cheers, mate. Thank you. Appreciate that. When you spoke about London, you said kind of you'd like to see the statistics of people that do London and then kind of carry on. And that was obviously an incredible memory for you. Has anything topped that since then? Has any race topped that? Do you have a favorite moment or favorite race? Because there's been so many.
Yeah, I got to run London with my now husband in 2017, the year we were getting married that year, and I got to pace him in London, and that was incredible. Although I had to bite my tongue the entire way around because he was like, "Don't be patronising, don't be misleading." And but yeah, getting to kind of do that with him was amazing. And then I've got to run races with friends. I think that's really special, getting to run I ran Chicago a few years ago with my friend, her first road marathon and her first postpartum race. And that was really cool. But I think just for me, my second New York my first New York marathon, it was my second race ever. And I had run 4:54 in London and then ran 4:10 in New York. And to have cut off such a huge chunk and to have seen the work pay off, and to have my family out there and it be New York, which is basically like the London Marathon, but with Americans cheering. So it's so much louder. That was a really special moment. That was for me. I wasn't raising money for charity. I had cut a huge amount of time off. I had my friends tracking me from home. And yeah, I think that one that was about me was my most special. but the races that are about other people I find the most enjoyable.
That's such a strange thing as well. We spoke about that on the podcast a lot in the past, that being able to share that moment with somebody and seeing their achievement is sometimes almost bigger than your own personal achievement. I don't know what that is. I don't know why we feel that, but I felt it too, pacing a friend around a race or helping somebody with a challenge. What do you think that is? Why do you think those moments are almost more special?
I mean, I guess you're if you're pacing someone, you're hopefully not running at your like max effort. So there's the fact that hopefully effort is slightly lower, so you can enjoy it more and take things in. But I think we're willing to hurt for other people far more than we are for ourselves, and you try and make it as enjoyable and as comfortable and as a good an experience for the other person as possible. So I remember, being around Paris with my friend, and I was like, give me everything you're carrying. Just like take your fuel belt off. I will just carry everything. And just trying to be like, how can I make this situation better for someone else? You then stop thinking about yourself and your feet hurting and the fact that, you can't wait to sit down or whatever, because it's about that person. I think it's odd, isn't it? Because ultimately we say, running is a solo selfish sport, but actually so many people either do it in memory and kind of do it for somebody else, or they are sacrificed. You see runners at the end of a marathon sacrifice the end of their race to help somebody over the finish line. And I think that's what makes running such a special sport, because you don't really have that in any others.
Yeah, and it's that selflessness that that is the right word, isn't it? I'm just trying to say it. It's quite hard to say that fast. It's that sort of nature that I think a lot of runners seem to have. Like you say, that image of the person helping somebody over a finish line, sacrificing their race, and a lot of the time there's no even second thought to that, is there? It's just like, this person's struggling, I'm going to help them. You're not thinking about yourself in that moment. And yes, it's solo. Yes, it can be selfish on a day-to-day basis when it comes to, other commitments and things like that. But I think inherently, because we're all experiencing the same thing, we all know how everybody else is feeling. And we've all had that part of the journey. I think just sometimes it's very important to remind yourself that we have all been in that place, because nobody has, started running and straight away is the best in the world. We've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah. And I think that comes across hugely in marathons, more so than any other race I've experienced, where if you see someone walking on the sidelines, you either, you say something like, keep going, or are you okay? And it's about the community spirit of, right, everybody here is trying to get from the start line to the finish line. Essentially, time is irrelevant. It's the distance, and you're all marathoners, whether you complete that in 2.5 hours or 7.5 hours. And there's that shared kind of pain, joy, knowing that everybody's done the 12, 20 weeks of training. Everyone's been through the same horrible winter when you get to the London Marathon start line. And I think it's that, the sense of community and the camaraderie that makes marathons, in my opinion, so much more special. Not more special, but so special. Which I don't think you get the same atmosphere at the start of like a 5K, 10K race, where it's maybe a bit more head down, go for a PB, don't make eye contact, kind of thing.
Be willing to hurt. The shared experience thing is something that I want to touch on, because it's not only shared experiences in races, but for you, it's kind of shared experience of life because of your Instagram page and the following that you've built up on that. Now there's nearly 100,000 people on there. What is that like sharing not only, your running journey, but your personal life and your professional life as well? Is that, has that been a vulnerable thing over the years, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think I'm naturally an oversharer anyway.
Okay.
I mean, in my professional job, I talk to people about their bowels every day. So I'm like, maybe I just find it kind of comfortable sharing. But I think what's been hard is my husband not want, like, for him being like, actually, I don't want to be on so much. And then I got loads of messages being like, have you got divorced? And I'm like, well, no, but he doesn't want to be on my social media all the time. And, coming up to the point where I'm thinking, am I going to keep sharing my son? And then thinking back of for me, the importance of sharing our surrogacy journey, because I don't think, again, fertility isn't spoken about very much. And other ways of building families, we just see these, 2.5 kids, perfect families on TV, on social media. And actually the trying to conceive, the IVF, the surrogacy, the miscarriages aren't talked about in the same way. And they are becoming more so now. But that was really important to me to educate through my Instagram and our journey on embryos and egg freezing and that side of things. I shared all online. And then I also shared our process through surrogacy. And that was important for me, I think, because I'd kept it bottled up for so many years, my diagnosis of MRKH, of the fact that we were going to have to use a surrogate, that actually once I felt confident enough to talk about it, I wanted to talk more than just my close group of friends. I wanted to talk to people that maybe had never heard of the condition, had never considered surrogacy, had never known anyone to go through this. And it was, maybe reserved for the Kim Kardashians of the world to show that actually it's actually much more common than people are aware of.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on that because the impact that you have had for many families, I'm sure, sharing that journey, people that are in similar situations who, as you say, are still hiding it, maybe as you hid it for many years. What has been the outreach from them to you, having shared that journey? And what's it like then, kind of feeling that impact that you've had personally on their lives?
Yeah, I think so. I've had some quite a few people who have MRKH reach out that are younger, or that are sort of mostly younger, and saying, "Oh, we're thinking about this. It's been really nice to see the positive side of your journey," or they've been recently diagnosed to say, "I'm really glad there's hope." And then sadly, the other side of much older women that have got it, that this wasn't an option when they were diagnosed, and so they either don't have families or this wasn't available to them. And so it really flipped this kind of the narrative for me of how lucky am I that I had such an amazing experience, and how lucky am I that this is available to me. So the impact was like, I'm so glad that I've been able to make the diagnosis time easier for some people, and then felt like a kind of a comrade almost in the people, because it's not a very common condition. So to find somebody else that is a similar age going through the same thing, or a little bit older than you and having gone through it, is actually really reassuring. And then feeling like we're paving the way for those future generations to be able to keep talking about it, because the generations before us weren't able to.
And I think that's the beauty of social media, right? There's so many negatives, and nobody's shying away from the negatives, but for people to be able to relate to situations that maybe wouldn't have been brought to the forefront in the past without something like Instagram or Facebook, or even Twitter to an extent, it opens up worlds that maybe people would never have known about before. And those opportunities and situations and shared life experience that people maybe just wouldn't have seen or wouldn't have known about.
Yeah. And I think, kind of in combination with the kind of movement at the moment to try and provide better support for women going through fertility treatments or pregnancy. Like, I've had friends that have been involved with writing their policies for pregnancy at work, and have known that my work didn't give me maternity leave. They made me take adoption leave, which just is a bit kind of, although it's exactly the
not
same,
right.
I'm
It's not.
entitled to the
Yeah,
same
but it's
thing.
not. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not the same thing, is it?
Yeah. So I was entitled to the same amount of leave, but it's just hard hearing that when you've already gone through so many struggles. And so for people to be putting that into place for the future generations, or their workers, and the same with their IVF procedures. If you don't go through IVF, you don't know that you have to go in so many times for scans. And how can we make that more just easier for staff to be able to say, I'm going through some treatment, I need some flexibility with this, because we had to choose a clinic that was open early enough that I could go to my scan and then get back in time for work. And I was asked by my then boss to defer my IVF because we didn't have enough staff. And I just don't think either of those things are acceptable. So yeah, I'm hoping that kind of talking about it helps with that, and then continuing to push for these pregnancy deferrals for people, and actually not just for the women, but if your wife or your partner gets pregnant and then you're also dealing with a newborn within the first 2 weeks, I don't think you should have to race your marathon. Leave your wife. I think that actually just some more compassion around the whole fertility and pregnancy and newborn stage, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, and as you say, like, I think there has been a movement in education a little bit over the past kind of couple of years, but I think that's where everything stems from, right? That education element of it, because if you're not educated in it, if you're not told about it, if people aren't sharing their stories, then there's no way you're going to know.
Yeah.
And I think that starts from the grassroots up, and it feels like, this is something that people should learn about at a young age to be able to grow with compassion, and not just I think sometimes people that have things thrust upon them, it's like, there's a lot of knowledge here and I don't know how to quite process this all. It's like you need to have this from the growth phase of your life almost.
Yeah, and I think just more awareness generally, and people being comfortable with talking about their experiences will help that happen. Because I think, for so long things were behind closed doors, that of course you can't expect an awareness of it if it's not something that's in your life and that you've had any contact with. But the more that we talk about it, and the more that things are shared in mainstream media, then the more kind of, I think that will kind of progress on into future generations kind of awareness of things. I don't think that was a very articulate way of saying that, but their awareness grows, and the next generation hopefully won't have these battles to face.
No, it makes total sense. Yeah, because if me, as hopefully a future father, has these conversations and understands a little bit more, then they're the conversations that I'm going to have with hopefully the next generations. And then it's that waterfall process of things just going down and down and down. And I think there is definitely certain aspects in culture that's happened from the generation above me to me. And I just think it's going to be, those next generations also knowing, as I'm speaking as myself here, knowing that they're lessons that you do need to hand down, knowing that those cultural things that we're now learning about need to be passed down, and then hopefully that just kind of continues to go down as well with other life lessons that you learn over the years. Let's touch on the rest of this year. I feel like we're only on the 13th of February when we're talking about this, so I say the rest of this year, but there's been a lot that's gone on already. Where are your, let's split this, where are your personal goals headed towards in 2025, and then your running goals to finish up in 2025 as well?
So personally, we are at the start of going through another, hopefully, surrogacy journey. So that's the biggest personal goal for 2025. And fingers crossed that all works. And then also doing my studying to become a registered sports dietitian. So those are my two kind of personal goals. And then running, this year I'm running Sydney Marathon. So getting that 7th major. And then Chicago, I'm taking a group of solo female runners out to kind of, with sports tours, to try and make it more accessible for women to go on these trips alone. Because I think once we hit about 30 plus, maybe 25, I don't know, but there's an age where you're then like, I don't want to go on my own. my friends, my family aren't interested in this, and maybe have got a family at home, like kids, so my partner can't come with me, otherwise it becomes too big of a deal and you're ending up parenting before, when it's supposed to be about you, and you're then trying to sort out kids and nappies at 5 a.m. before your race. So trying to make a more accessible group of supportive women to be able to go and run some of the majors without feeling like they are, dragging their family around the world for their hobbies, basically.
And we'll finish with this, because I feel like I'd be silly not to ask, and it would be a bit neglectful of me, I guess. If somebody is listening to this and they are beginning their surrogacy journey, obviously I know there is a lot even before that part of it, or they're beginning, an athletic journey or a running journey. Just split those two and just give a bit of advice at how you kind of approach both of those situations.
Yeah, so I think with the surrogacy, a lot of people come to surrogacy having had, trauma and hard times before that, whether that is getting your MRKH diagnosis, whether that's going through cancer or miscarriages. But I want to share that it can be a really positive experience. It can be a really lovely thing to go through. We have a great relationship with our surrogate. It has been amazing, and I feel very fortunate to have had that. So I think that although leading up to it, everything feels like the last resort, and that feels like you don't want to have to go that route, but if that is the where you've ended up, it can be a really nice experience. So that's my kind of my message to them. And then for running, I think just my main thing would be like, keep it fun. Remember why you've started running, and don't or try not to, and let me know how you get on, because I still often do let running become a stress. But it's supposed to be fun. This is your hobby and it's supposed to be enjoyable. So figure out ways that you can make that happen, whether that's joining a run club, whether that's going to park run, whether that's signing up for races. That is, for me, signing up for races is my I love it. And I think actually looking back with Berlin training, I only did one race that whole training block, and I think that contributed to not enjoying it so much. So find out how to make that enjoyable for you, and lean into that. And fuel. A happy runner, a hungry runner is a miserable runner. A happy runner is a fueled runner.